Hi, good evening, Group 5 Proxy Racers. It is Monday night, a Victoria Day long weekend in Canada. And as I would probably know it, the week end before the Indianapolis 500 and the Memorial Day long weekend in the USA. So last year we did a video and we took the bodies off the top few cars, and it seemed to be fairly popular, and I thought I would do this again. I'm hopeful that you can all understand my somewhat South African / Canadian accent, and that you find some value in looking at what the top 10 or 12 cars achieved or did in the race. So without further delay, let's start with car number 54. Les is from Kelowna, and what is unique about Les's car is that for the last couple of years he has built his own chassis out of Lexan, and he's had good results. And when this car ran this past Saturday on my track, it ran extremely well, and it came a very solid fourth. So let's take a look and see what Les did with his car. So first of all, we'll do a quick weight, front and back. And looking at the car, it's got about 58 grams on the back and about 42.5 on the front, and the total weight on the scale comes in at 100 grams, 100.6. So let's take the body off. This is recorded live, so apologies for the hiccups and the delays and maybe the odd mistake, but anyways, so let's use some tape. It looks like the type of tape that you would see for when they put the vapor barrier on a home, that type of tape. So inside of the body is a piece of cardboard, and obviously super lightweight, nothing extra in the body. The chassis is very well braced. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, but it has two very solid I-beams, I guess, or supports running lengthwise. Absolutely amazingly well done. Even the axle guide holders are adjustable, and they are made out of Lexan. The looks like even the motor mount is made out of Lexan. Les must have taken a lot of time. That is a piece of art. Well done, Les. Weight in the middle, weight a little bit towards the front, and no play in the rear axle. Everything is very solid. If I was to find, the one issue that he did have is he made his guide out of Lexan as well, and that did cause some issues for some of the sensors. I added a piece of tape to it to help, and it seemed like the tape lasted pretty much the whole season. But the car is, there is a motor pod as well. Wow, that is an incredible piece of work. So there is a motor mount. So these two braces are on the inside, and then these braces are on the outside. And if you look carefully, you'll be able to see that there is a motor mount. So the motor and axle is mounted on a motor mount like a slotted style. Very little play in it, but the car was very smooth. Perhaps a little bit too tight, maybe for tracks with less traction. So if I was Les, I would maybe loosen up the motor part and maybe remove some of the tape if it does not cause wheel hop. Maybe send it back, because I think on a track with good traction, this car will run well, but obviously on some of the tracks with less traction, it might have had an issue. So that is car number 54, and that is Les's BMW M1. I think this car finished in and around the 12th position. I don't have the final results, and some of the points were extremely close. So please don't hold me to that. That's car number 54. Car number 64 is low tech. This is the only Ferrari in the field. It's a very narrow car. It ran very smoothly, perhaps a little bit lacking in the horsepower department, but it ran very smoothly. Everything is very neatly done. If you look at the front tires, if you look at the rear tires, everything is extremely well prepped. Those tires are very smooth and very round. Everything, the way that the actual motor mount moves in the chassis is smooth. There's no front and back play. There's a little bit of sideways play. Car weighs in at about 50 grams, 50.1 on the rear axle, and about 38.9, so 39 grams on the front axle. Looks like it's NSR tires. I can't say, perhaps it's not. I don't see the traditional NSR markings on it. And if you hear a buzzing, there is a big fly that's flying around in the garage. It's almost summer here in Chilliwack, and we have a fair share of bugs. So again, the car has a Lexan interior, very lightweight, nicely taped in. Everything is very solid. Absolutely beautiful car. Narrow in the rear, so I think that created perhaps a little bit of a challenge. One of the few inlines that ran in the series. Everything is just well prepared. Guide is a little bit tight. Not bad though. A slotted long can flat 6 motor, an offset, a little bit of weight on either side of the motor, nicely taped in. That's something I noticed. I did notice a few cars had the weight come loose. I do recommend you adding some tape or perhaps some additional glue. E6000 is a glue that works really well in holding in these weights. Everything is just well prepared. If you look at the stops on either side of the axle, well prepared car. It ran very smoothly, perhaps down a tad on horsepower, but a very nicely prepared car for Low-Tech's first entry into the Group 5 Proxy series. Car number 67 is a Lancia, one of a couple of Lancias. This is a Lance Lauderlove out of Hawaii. I do believe, I think he might have been out of another state previously, another state. Maybe he was in another state, but anyway, out of another state. A Shark 25K motor. Again, front tires. People sometimes underestimate the importance of the front axle ride height, and the front tires being absolutely true in the role that the front of the car plays in the handling. So the Lancia comes in at around 28.7, let's call it 29 in the front, and about 50 grams in the back on the rear axle, so 50.2. Again, there's a couple of tires look great. Don't see any real issue with anything. Let's look at the motor part. Nice and smooth. No issues. Rear screw was a little bit on the loose side. Sometimes what I do is I add some white glue, like just like a school glue to the screws, just to hold them a little tight. So a little bit of weight on the motor part, quite a bit of weight on the front of the car. There's some weight on the side of the guide, some weight here and in front of the axle. I personally don't put that much weight towards the front of the car, but everything is very neat. The way the car is prepared, everything is. One thing I do notice that the motor is glued, but I don't notice a screw. Of course, the NSR motors do not have a screw hole in the front, but this motor has been glued in, which is very important in making sure that you don't get any wheel hop. Everything is very smooth. It was a nice car to drive. Again, I'm surprised the car didn't perform better, but I mean, it was a top 10 or close to the top 10 finish. So in this field, that is nothing to be ashamed of. The cars are so evenly matched that even the most minute D-slot or hiccup, anything like that, can drop you several places. Lexan interior, Lancia from Lance Lauderlove. Again, a very well prepared car. We're moving to car number 3, one of the Mustangs, which is essentially the same as a Capri, a 25,000 slotted motor, tape, all very tight motor part, almost no play in the motor part whatsoever. Good body float, but no play in the motor part. Brumos RSR, one of the guys that enters proxies on a regular basis and a great contributor to our forum. So we do appreciate that. And very neatly prepared car. So this car actually lost a couple of pieces of weight in the qualifying, but it ran very well. at very small tires. It was what appeared to be an easy car to drive. I think it finished in and around 5th spot. Apologies if I'm mistaken, but 5th or 6th maybe in the last race. It was a well-prepared car. I think this is one of those cars that probably doesn't need a lot of things differently. Perhaps if I was to say maybe a little bit less or a little bit more body float, sorry, motor pod float, but it's a car that did well. I think it will need new tires for the next event. Again, a Lexan interior, very lightweight body, extremely lightweight. So that's car number 3. Oh, I forgot to weigh car number 3, and I'll do that now. Again, nothing like doing it live. So car number 3 came in with about 36 grams on the front and about 48 grams, 48.4 in the back and 36.3. So I would have to say that that is one of the cars that probably has the most weight towards the front. Most of the cars that seem to be doing well is in and around 65% of weight balanced towards the back. One other thing I noticed is that it's got a guide that is it's a little bit on the. In fact, this guide is quite quite tight. I would definitely take a look at that, Brumos. That guide's too tight for my personal liking, but anyway, it's a car that performed well enough to earn a spot within the top 10. Car number 52 is a car from Coquitlam Kit, and this car did well. It ran very solidly throughout the season. It's got a unique setup in that it has an angle winder, but it has a short can motor. So it uses those, what used to be Nova, I don't know who makes them now, maybe Slot Car Corner, Nova adapters to position the short can at an angle. The tires on this car looks extremely good, to the point where I'd be very tempted if I was Richard to send this car back with these same tires. They're in really good condition. Nice body float for number 52. No, let's just do this before I take the body off. Okay, so front we have about 33.8 and 52.5 on the rear axle. So a lot of weight added to the front of the motor pod, weight added to the inside of the chassis. I think that's just braced. A good idea to brace the front guide holder. Some weight on the side towards the front. Not much, virtually no. What you're seeing there is actually the chassis flexing, but very little. Oh, there is some motor pod movement. Now that I turn the car upside down, you can actually, if you can look carefully, you'll see that the tape flexes as the motor pod moves inside the chassis. A car that performed very well. A couple of years ago, Richard had a very strong entry, and then last year it didn't go as well. But this year he had another car, a car that again performed very well. So that's Richard, car number 52. Stevie, also one more of the entrants that has been racing with us for a while, a BMW 320, and nice pot movement, nicely taped. You can see perhaps a little bit of oil coming through from the motor. Front wheels, super hard front wheels. Nice loose guide, but it does jump back to the center position. And the car weighs in at 55.5 on the rear axle and 31.6 on the front. When I drove this car in qualifying, it had lots of grip. This is another car that I think could probably come back and run on the same set of tires. Lots of grip. In fact, I think it actually improved from round zero. The only challenge with this car I found when I was driving it in qualifying is that it was just on the verge of wanting to go on two wheels or bicycle. So either the front axle needs to be lower and supported, or perhaps weight needs to moved back. The car has some weight on the side. It has a 30K Shark motor. It has some weight on the motor mount, and it's got a couple of pieces of weight. Those are, I think, 2 grams each, so that's about 4 grams on the front. Looks like, unless there was, I'm not sure if there was supposed to be weight on this side or not. Perhaps he balanced it, because if you look at the weight, it's not evenly distributed with the gears being on this side. So it's possible that Steve actually designed it in such a way that there was more weight on that side than this side. A car that ran very well, and I personally think with a little bit of fine tuning, this car can come back and pretty much compete as is. So that's a 30K Shark. Yeah. Often we get entrants asking about, how does my car compare, or how does my car compete? What can I do to improve? It's such, there's a piece of weight. So I'm wondering, Steve, if that fell out of your car. Maybe for you guys that have been watching the video, you would have been able to tell. I just noticed that. So I'm wondering if that was the piece of weight that came out of the inside of Steve's car number 9. Often we get people asking, what can I do to improve my car? What's wrong with my car? How can I make it faster? The reality is that these cars are so evenly matched that it's like the devil is in the detail. And I think one thing that you can do is you can take another look at the dyno results that Mike Smokio did for us, to help with the gear ratios and help to set up the car for the right axle speed. Other than that, look at the weights, look at to see where the weight distribution is, and what is the sweet spot for weight. I think if I was to send my car back, I might add a couple of grams of weight. That's for me personally. The problem is when you add that weight, it might slow the car down. Okay, so this is Tony, our well-known Proxy entry from Tacoma. and has been in the industry with slot cars for the longest time, with Fantasy Hobbies, and now with Skylectric Hornby USA. Beautiful Warsteiner, car number 77, another BMW 320. Looks like an NSR 25K motor. He has some surgical tape at the on the bottom of the chassis, and just the slightest of part movement. Very smooth, although it does seems to it's pretty even. I was thinking that perhaps it tightens up a little bit to the left side, but it seems fairly even. So car number 77. It has about 38.3 grams on the front and 47 grams on the rear axle. So let's have a look and see what's underneath the Warsteiner. Body screws are nice and tight, meaning that there might be a little bit of glue inside there, and that is something that is so important. Building a proxy car is really about compromising, because you're setting the car up to be as good as it can be on the variety of tracks. I've read that, you know, who was it? Roscoe saying that he's going to tune his car for 10 volt. The idea is that you tune your car to be the best compromise it can be, because some tracks, the rule says the cars need to be run at 10 to 12 volts. So it's impossible to build a car that is, well, it is possible to build a car that is absolutely perfect at one voltage or one type of track, perhaps a longer track or a shorter track. But we run on a variety of tracks, and that means that you have to compromise. So this is car number 77. It's got quite a bit of weight on the motor. It's using the lock nut screws on the motor mount. Those, I think, are from Slot Car Corner. There might be some other people. I think it's a 2mm screw with a little lock nut on the top. There's some tungsten slotted weights on the what would that be? A few millimeters behind the front axle, and then there's also a couple of pieces of weight just towards the front of the car. The front axle is nice and loose. Everything is very smooth. Very well prepared car. This car ran very nicely, and it's a car that actually towards the middle and end of the season started to perform better, which makes me think that the tires got better as the season progressed. Everything is just the attention to detail. Well, it's a bit tight, but it's everything is just absolutely perfect. Guide doesn't quite jump back to the center, but it's loose. Again, very well prepared car. Very light interior. Again, some Lexan taped in. Car number 77. I'm taking a minute to put the screws back so that when I ship these cars that I know what belonged to what. Okay, car number 77, AJK from Tacoma. Hey, Tony. Super Slab, Capri. Another car that ran well, and in fact, I think it performed better. This car, number 82, and car number 52, was in a serious long battle against each other. Tape, got some fiber tape lengthwise and then a piece across. Tires are looking really good. Again, a car that I think almost be tempted to send back with the same tires if there's enough rubber left. Car weighs in at 44.5 on the rear axle and 32.2 on the front axle. nicely prepared car. Front wheels are nice and smooth. One thing I do notice is the axle in the front could have been, the wheels in the front could have been spaced a tiny bit wider. If you can see that, it's just a little bit on the narrow. There's a little bit more room left to maybe, add another millimeter on the side, maybe 1.5, and which will add about 2 to 3 millimeters in width. And so what that helps with is to just stop the car from rolling as you lean on the outside wheel. So that's something to look at. Guide is perfect. It springs back to the center. Lexan interior. Nice piece of weight right on the motor part. And that's about it. 25K motor, slotted, glued in. Everything is super smooth, like super slab, super smooth. Um, Perfect, perfect. Everything here is very nicely prepared. Um, Very interesting to see how this car compared to car number 52, which has a very different configuration, and they both competed very well against each other. So Super Slab 25K motor, that's a 34 crown. I'm not sure what size pinion, but that information is on the website, on the forum. If you can see this, the screws have a shank that has no thread on it, which helps with good smooth body float. Very nicely prepared car, number 82, belonging to Alvine. I think I was saying this during the race on Saturday. One of the Proxy racers in North America that deserves to be in the Proxy Hall of Fame is Chris Walker. Always extremely well prepared cars. Everything is absolutely precise. Everything from the paint to the decals to the chassis is meticulously prepared, and the results that he achieves race after race shows how important the attention to detail is. He ran a similar setup last year, but this year, I think last year was a Piranha motor, which is about 21.5K. This year he ran the 25K slotted, and the car ran very well, smooth as silk. Um, just as you started adding the motor, as he started adding the motor, the car was sometimes slightly more of a handful, but again, a beautiful car to drive. Let's have a look. I don't really think we need, I'm not going to remove the body. We can pretty much see everything we need to see. There is a P&N chassis or motor mount. I think this is from Japan originally. There is the motor pod itself doesn't actually move, or if it does, there's very limited movement, but there is some movement in this brass strip that holds the motor mount in place, but for most part there is virtually no movement. I'm going to pull this because I want to see what the let's see what this chassis looks like from the other side. And these pins are nice and tight. There's that kind of attention to detail is so important. Body is super light, and I forgot to weigh this. So we're looking at about 32.6 grams on the front and 48 grams exactly on the rear axle. I mean, one of these Chris Guy chassis, I think you've seen the pictures multiple times on the forums that he has kindly posted. Everything is just meticulous. There is a spring wire that runs across. I'm not sure if you can see it on the video, but there's a spring wire that runs across, which I assume allows some of the sideways flex, or at least this kind of flex helps to sort of, I guess, balance that. The motor pod is quite tight, but also note that being an inline, he has spacers on either side of the gear, and so there's no actual motor shaft that's keeping the mesh. Tires are absolutely perfect. Looks like it is a tire. It looks like an NSR wheel, so I assume this is an air hub. And everything on it is just meticulous. Guide is nice and loose, comes back to the center mostly, and that is car number 60. Like I say, I think Crest deserves to be in the Slot Car Hall of Fame. Always brings a solid entry to, doesn't matter if it's a classic Formula 1 car or if it's a Group 5 car or whatever type of car it is, always brings a solid effort. Car number 10 is our friend from Kelowna, Rob CGY Racer. Rob is originally from Calgary, and I guess that's why he's CGY Racer. Rob has only been entering proxies for the last few years, and he has also brought fantastic entries. Absolutely, car number 10, which is his preferred number, highest of highest standards. Rob is a tremendous help for myself in organizing and running this proxy. Absolutely nicest guy you can imagine, and brings a fantastic car to the field. Rob entered the smallest motor in this particular series, only 22K, and he was very close to a third place finish. If I haven't seen the final results, if he did not finish third, he was certainly very close to being third. As you can see, there's quite a bit of weight on the motor motor pod. There's quite a bit of weight on the side and weight on the front, also on the side of the guide. This was a car that required you to drive it with momentum, and once you figured that out, it ran very well. When I qualified this car, in fact, on purpose, because I had the luxury of not being concerned about deslotting, I ran it almost flat out through the bank curve at the top or at the end of the straight, and lo and behold, the car stuck, and that was the lap time that gave me the best time. Running it in a race, though, that would have been a brave move if you were to attempt that during the race. Again, guide jumps back to the center. Motor pod has nice movement in it. Tires are fantastic. Again, another car that I think can probably go back and race on the same set of tires again. Um, I think Rob did a fantastic job. To me, it's fascinating how well he did with the 22K. It just goes to show that it's not just about having a big motor and big horsepower. Car ran very well and gave him a solid uh, third or fourth place. I think he was on the podium at least a few times. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly how many. But a well-prepared car. Be interesting to see what Rob brings to the field next year, as I know him as I am, is going to build himself a new track. So that's car number 10, Rob from Kelowna. Now, I said earlier when I was looking at Chris Walker's car, I said if there was someone that was deserving of a um, Slot Car Hall of Fame entry, it was Chris, but I will have to apologize to Chris. If there was someone that was even more deserving of being in the um, Slot Car Proxy Hall of Fame, it is my friend Mike Smokey O. Don't believe everything you read on the forum. Him and I have a good banter going, but I have the utmost respect for Mike. Year after year, in whatever proxy he races and enters, he brings some of the absolutely finest proxy cars. He jokes about the fact that he is new to rubber-tired proxies and that he's claim to fame are silicone. But make no mistake, it is when Mike first joined the proxy, I think he entered because he wanted to help us in growing the series. And then he came back and he built better and better cars. Or let's not say he built better cars. He always builds a great car, but he focused a little bit more on it, and the results speaks for itself. He was very close to being second. I don't think he finished second, but that's only because it's hard for him to beat me. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But it was a solid entry. He's using one of the what are these guys called? Is it CG Matthews, the company that he has that does the 3D printing? He's using one of those motor parts. It has the slot car corner motor mount. It is the tires on this car looks amazing, and I think it's possible that it again can run another series. 25K, 34 crown, weight on the motor part, weight, quite a bit of weight here behind the motor or behind the front axle. And as you can expect from Mike, a perfectly loose but well-centered guide. He ran these super hard front tires. I kind of joked in the beginning that it was very noisy. It almost looks like a plastic, but it's a very hard front tire. Car ran very well and definitely, without a doubt, the best entry from Mike in this particular proxy. And I can assure you, if you see Smokey O finishing in third place or thereabouts, it just speaks to how strong this field is. It was a car that, for some reason, did not perform as well on Saturday. Not sure. It either lost some speed or it lost some traction, maybe a little bit of both. But it didn't do as well in the final race as expected. And although I joked, No, I did not tune his car, and I did not make any adjustments to his car. He doesn't need me to make any adjustments to his car. He's well capable of adjusting his own car. This is car number.
My apologies. I don't understand.
This is car number 7. This is my own car. And if you heard something in the background, that was my Google device. So car number 7, and I think I neglected to weigh those last 2 cars. So let's do this again. Car number 10, like I said, doing something live is not maybe as easy as it might sound. Car number 10 comes in at 38.5 and 53.5 on the rear axle. So 53.5 on the rear axle and 38.5 on the front axle for car number 10. And Smokio's car number 70 comes in at about 56.1 on the rear axle and 35 on the front axle. So my car number 7, comes in at 59 exactly on the rear axle and 27.4 on the front guide. So 59 and 27.4. My car has quite a bit of body float and also quite a bit of motor mount float. When I first started building this car, I had one of the newer slotted motor parts in it that runs the ball bearings. And I tried everything. I could not understand where the wheel hub was coming from. And towards the end of tuning the car, in fact, just a couple of days before the deadline, switched back to a motor part with the more traditional bushings in it, and the hub went away. So I could not get the slotted motor part with the bearings to work for me. So this is, let me find the right screwdriver. So this is car number 7. Guide binds a little bit to the one side, but it jumps back to the center. Again, tires are in excellent condition. Tempted to send the car back because I'm going to have a busy summer. Rear screw is nice and tight. I put some of that white glue on the screws, which is not enough to actually glue them in, but it's enough to just tighten them up. I have a 30K scale auto motor. It's about the 3rd or 4th time now that I've been running this motor. I like it because it has high RPM, but it's got low torque. So it has a Lexan interior taped in. Nothing too special or fancy about that. So not sure how much you can see. As you can tell, I hide things pretty well. It has some weight on the motor part. There's a small bit of weight on the side and a small weight just behind the guide. Front wheels are maxed as wide as it can go. That's fairly loose. Rear axle is loose. Well, not loose, but there's a little bit of play in it. Not much else I can tell you. There's a little bit of play in the front axle and a little bit of play in the motor part. I noticed last year that Leon had quite a bit of weight in the BMW 320. He had some weight behind this front axle. I did not go that route. I didn't put as much weight on the front as he did. I came second. He won. So maybe I should live and learn. I don't plan to do much different on this car. I might add a tiny bit of weight to the motor part, but I'm very tempted to send it back and run it one more time. Like I said, it will be a busy summer, and I think it just needs perhaps a little bit of fine-tuning. It needs an evolution, not a revolution, in my opinion. Car number 5. I have to absolutely take my hat off to Camber, who came, saw and conquered with our Proxy. Um, I think it's fair to say that he did a brilliant job. When I first drove his car, I was really unsure as to how the car would cope on smaller tracks with so much horsepower, and also with being heavier than most cars, how the tires would last. And it is obvious from the results that he did both those things very well. The car weighs in at 66.3 on the rear axle and 38.7 on the front. And the car has a brass chassis with a carbon fiber front piece. And let's take the body off and see what it looks like underneath. And let's first of all figure out how to take the body off. I think this might be it. If you can see, there's a little arrow and a little arrow and a little arrow. So let's hope these are the right screws. I'm also hoping that this video is actually recording, because if I just did the last, I don't know, 45 minutes and it did not record, it was going to be a real bummer. It will be a real bummer. Okay, there we go. So, oh, what a work of art. So beautifully anodized, what looks like 2mm lock nut screws. This is a 30K, I think it's an SRP motor. It's running what looks like a plastic or glass reinforced pinion. Everything is super smooth. I think the chassis has its origins in Plaffit. I've seen some German websites that have this type of chassis, and as you can see, I'm not sure if you can, but the front actually pivots on, are they springs? Yes, they are springs. So I'm not sure if the video is going to do it justice, but there's a spring and there's a spring and there's a spring here towards the back. So I'm sorry, no, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's a spring. As you can see, the back seems to have been tightened down a little bit more. The front is less tightened down, and then this pivots. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that on the video, but just trust me on this front pivots. So absolutely an amazing job to get a car with this kind of horsepower, this kind of weight, to perform so well under a variety of conditions, be that 10, 11, or I think some tracks ran at 12 volts. Independent front axles. You can look at those wheels. I assume they might be ball bearing axles, and I'm pretty sure they are. And then the guide, what looks like is adjustable. That's solid though in the front, and then it pivots on these 3 screws. Now it does not look to me Right, the back. No. So it looks like the brass is sort of for added weight. It doesn't look as if that is actually. In fact, I'm not 100% sure what this carbon fiber on the side does. Maybe Camber can explain that to us. I'm not, because that seems to be mounted to the brass plate, and it seems to be solid. And then it actually does not. The motor sits on the brass plate, so the brass plate would be for weight. I'm not 100% sure what this carbon fiber does that's on the side of the brass plate, because this piece here, which looks like a, I don't know, almost like a peace sign, this is independent. So beautiful engineered work of art, well deserving of the 2018 Group 5 Championship from Australia. So again, thanks to each and every one of you for entering. Soon we'll see the results for the top 16 cars, and I'm looking forward to having the shootout with the other entries. And I wish you all well for the 2019 Group 5 Proxy, and thanks again for participating. Thanks for interacting on the forum, and see you soon.